question is optional. And this question is asking about your greatest success during this project in terms of its impact for your organization and your community. The value of this question is that it's an opportunity for you to really highlight and shine a light on the things that you're doing that you're really proud of. You know, whether it be for your organization or really strong feedback you could see from community. Maybe it's a strong turnout, or maybe it's a responsiveness to some of the challenges that you are observing in reaching your goals that you took a sidestep and were able to increase your level of success towards achieving those goals. So it's an optional question, but we really would suggest that you respond to it. If for nothing else, then for you to get in the practice of thinking about yourself as an organization and as program staff. Because this is all what this application process and grant process is about, right? Like storytelling for your work. Moving now to the project challenges section. The reason why we ask these questions are really so that we can be responsive to your needs and think about strategize some professional development opportunities or technical assistance opportunities that we can bring for you, our grantees, and also for the field. So if there are challenges, we would really encourage you to talk to us about them so that we can be a support and really a collaborator in the success of your project and organization. Questions 5 and 6 and 7 all allow you a maximum of 750 characters. So we don't really want you to belabor anything, but we want to give you the opportunity to let us know if there were some issues, and if there are issues, again, that we can be responsive and supportive of your future success. So in terms of what challenges you are facing, we're really thinking about if there were things that are happening maybe on a grander scale, if there were some issues, for example, with maybe the displacement of your organization from a state, if that was a challenge that you were facing, and if that was something that sort of impacted your ability to implement this project, that would be something that could be edited. Maybe you were hiring an additional staff person and it just didn't work out initially. All of those things would be appropriate responses to this question. And then number 6 is more specific, right? What helped you to meet those challenges? This is really where you could ask us for, are there for example, resources that you as grantees can access that maybe would support you hiring a new staff person or an entry-level staff person. We're always trying to compile resources from the field, all for ourselves, but obviously always for you. And so just making sure that we're publishing that on our website. As Ross has shown you, our website is very dynamic, and we're posting a lot of resources on there, and we want to continue to do that. And so this will also help us to identify the areas that maybe we're missing and need to be providing greater access to. For question number 7, please describe any professional development opportunities that your organization would be interested in attending or participating in. Maybe it's conferences, maybe it's leadership development training, maybe it's more board development, or on the heels of applying for, or I think you all will be applying for the organizational grant program cycle in this upcoming year to maintain consistent funding. And maybe the things you've been hearing about in terms of cultural equity and inclusion. All those things would be really welcome suggestions in this section. And then finally, question number 8, do you need to modify your project and or budget for year 2? This is a simple yes or no question, and this is something that we'll just be responding to. So if you see a yes there, then we'll be reaching out to you to get some additional information. And then you'll see that now question number 8 is, did you post on Discover LA? So Discover LA, the process for posting on there was a little bit cumbersome. So we've gone ahead and posted how to post your event. We've given you instructions here in this section. And if you didn't post anything, then just let us know what the problem was, because there have been technical issues and we have been able to address them. So as you do so, we understand that there can be challenges sometimes, and we want to support you in getting the word out about all of your events. So that's the reason why that is included here. I do want to say that this question, participation in Project Reach, in the second year of your grant, is actually asking for information about the number of participants, the number of staff. So I'd recommend, even though you're in year one, and I'm sure just trying to get through year one, as you begin year two, or even as you're completing the year one report, take a look at the participation and Project Reach questions in the year two OGP report, so that you can, if you haven't already begin thinking about the ways in which you're really having a tremendous impact in your community. And you'll see what I mean when you look at those questions, because when we're asking you about how many free attendees you have, how many staff people you have, we're really thinking about like the broader impact of your work in your community. Just like the audit report thinks about the broader impact of arts and culture funding in Los Angeles, and the way in which by funding a staff person, for example, you provide that individual with the opportunity to access a lot of other resources in their community, and so that amplifies the economy to a greater extent. Similar thinking, but just a little 411 for the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Laura. That was really great, helpful to have you go through these narrative questions. And yes, thank you for reminding folks that in year two of the OGP cycle, the reporting questions will actually go more in depth and ask about demographic reach, geographic reach. So you want to make sure that you're figuring out how to capture that information for your participants. So let's talk about the supplemental materials task that you'll fill out for the report. We went through this at the beginning, but just a reminder, you're going to need to make sure that you have a copy of your thank you letter to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you letter it's basically a copy of what you sent to whoever your board supervisor is. So you're going to see in Exhibit B, there's instructions for doing that. If you haven't done that already, open up Exhibit B. There's instructions, and there are addresses in Exhibit B for each one of the 5 supervisorial district board members. So make sure that you do that. If you haven't already done so, do it now and save a copy in your supplemental materials section of your report. You don't need to email it to us or send it to us by mail. Just save it in your report supplemental materials form. There is a space there for you to upload the copy, so save it in there. Make sure that you've also uploaded in that task the proof of recognition and the, at minimum 1, at most 3 high-quality images of activities or events that happen during the year that you're reporting on. And then this brings us to our last form in the report, the invoice form. So this is where you want to make sure that if there's been any changes, that you have reported it not just to us, but to vendor services. Vendor services and the Arts Commission do not share a database. So when you make a change in your invoice form, like for example, maybe you have a different address now than you had in your contract at the beginning of the cycle, we do not have access to vendor services files. So when you submit that invoice, they're going to write that check out and send it to the address that they've got in their database. So if it has changed, make sure you let us know by filling out our contact change form, but also letting vendor services know how what the changes are to your account, so that when you submit your invoice and your check is written out, it goes to the correct address. Similarly, your vendor number is very important, and your vendor number is in your OGP contract. In case you can't locate it, go to the OGP contract. Your vendor number is listed in there. Make sure that the vendor number is the same one in your contract, because if it's not, there will be a delay in payment, because the vendor services will write the check out to the vendor number listed in their database, not the vendor number you enter into your invoice. Make sure that you've made sure that all of that information is correct. Put all of that information into your invoice. I believe your invoice form is going to be auto-filling what you had in your application. So just verify that all that information is correct and change it if it's not. And then put in your primary contact name, your primary contact's phone number, and your primary contact's email. Note that if there are corrections that need to be made to any of your forms in your report, we will be contacting whoever this primary application contact is. Make sure that we have that information. We will send out an email saying, we did not process your report. You need to fix this, this, and that. We'll send you a list of any corrections that need to be made, and then we'll give you a deadline by which to do that. Everything needs to be completely corrected and submitted by May 15th. So make sure you give yourself enough time to do that, and that you're filling everything out correctly, and that you're supplying all the supplemental materials you need to supply to make sure that it's a smooth process. Once we get it, we will process the invoice as soon as we receive it. So as long as everything's in there and all contract requirements have been met, it should take between 6 to 8 weeks to receive payment, unless you're registered with direct deposit. And if that's the case, then it would be more of a 4 to 6 week window. So make sure that you complete the form, you save and exit, and then you'll be taken back to the dashboard. There's one last really important step to this. You need to make sure that you click Submit Year 1 Report. Otherwise, you may have completed all the forms, but unless you click Submit Year 1 Report, we won't know it. So that's the final piece. You need to click Submit Year 1 Report in the dashboard once all of the forms are done, and then that's the final step. Just a note about the expenses. For all the expenses that you're listing in your budget table, make sure that you've got some documentation. We may audit your organization. We do a random audit of 10% of all grantees at the end of the fiscal year. So in June and July, we'll be conducting this random audit. And in prior years, we actually required OGP1 grantees to submit expenses like receipts and invoices and documentation with the report. We no longer do that. However, we do now do this random audit, and this is of all budget categories. So just make sure you're doing some record keeping, that you've got a file somewhere with all of these receipts all collected, so that if in case we do contact you to ask for proof of expenses, that you can just easily gather those financial records up and send them back to us, and then we can check you off as having submitted all the requirements for the audit. So now is the time, if there's any questions, for us to go through those last questions. I haven't seen anything come through the chat box yet, so I just want to make sure that we answer any questions. If you don't have questions, you can actually log out. This is the end of the webinar, and I thank you very much for being on the line. Okay, so it looks like we have one question. Will we have access to the recording of this webinar for review? Yes, we will be sending out a copy of this recording next week. So keep an eye out. It's going to be a link to this recording as well as a survey. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, everyone. Seems like we've answered everyone's questions. Thanks. Have a great day.